Thanks for being here today. I have some notes here. I brought some visual aids actually, so I'm actually going to do a little bit of that. We were just in a class sort of reviewing the, some of us here, including Rosie, we're in a class reviewing the introduction to spiritualism. So we had done that a long time ago and thought it'd be good to go through it again, so we went through it. And in that process we were talking, learning about, or relearning about spiritualism, and that spiritualism is a science, it's a philosophy, and a religion. So in that, one of the things that I like about it is different than other religions, because religions don't really have, a lot of other religions don't, mainstream religions don't have like a scientific background. It's just, you have to have faith in this story that's written, and that's about it. So although people would say there are various feelings that they feel that it's real and things, but it's, it doesn't require that. In spiritualism, we talk about evidence, we seek proof and talk about evidence. So we're a little more on the science side, looking at things. And in that spirit, I'm going to be a little bit sciencey today. So I just want to just mention that. I think I just want to ask this question: can science prove God or infinite intelligence? Can science prove that? And we talk about having sort of faith in things, but is there really actually a proof? Is there more evidence or science and proof? And in recent years, there actually have been some things that sort of point in that direction. So I sort of want to look at those things a little bit. And there's two different areas that I want to look at today that sort of talk about that I found really sort of, to me, it is like proof to me. And of course, scientists are very skeptical, and they need to have, there's a scientific method that says something is real. So I thought that was very interesting. I would also sort of, in the discussion, think about infinite intelligence. Think about intelligence. Also think about the term consciousness in connection to intelligence. I think all of the ideas about, when we think about intelligence, we're thinking about a conscious thing. When people talk about it, you have to sense a consciousness, like we have a consciousness, we can think something. And there is a connection there. And of course, the term God is used frequently for that same thing that we think of as infinite intelligence. So what I wanted to look a little bit is interesting story about in quantum mechanics and quantum theory. This is a science thing. How many of you are have seen anything about that, or you know a little bit about what that is? Okay, I think it's quite interesting, and I wanted to sort of talk about it, because these are scientific experiments, and what they're really sort of doing is, seemingly to me, is sort of proving the existence of consciousness, but maybe in a broader sense, not just a single consciousness, but what we would call an infinite intelligence, or a collective consciousness, sometimes people call it, or again, God. So, so I want to talk a little bit about the double slit experiment and what that is. Some of you may have heard about that. So I actually made a little hand drawing. I'm not an artist, but I want to show you a few things. So in this, what happened was scientists it's like we shoot marbles through two slits. There's a platform and there's slits, and they shoot marbles through there, or golf balls or something, and then when they would go through the slits and hit the back wall. So this would be like, right? This is a little bit of a picture of this. If you see, there's sort of shoot the particles, they go through the two slits, and what they would form would be two lines on the back wall, basically. And so they did this. They also did it with smaller particles. So they shot photons or electrons through here, small particles. Shot it through here, and they would form these two lines as basically particles. But what they discovered when they shot the smaller particles through, and they even did this an individual particle at a time, was that they discovered that these particles were not really functioning like a physical particle, like a golf balls would be or something. They're not functioning like that. They function in this way, which is they function as a wave. So if you think about waves, if you throw a pebble into a pond and it makes ripples as waves. So think of that as that's what's waves, because they talk about energy as waves. So we have this, what we call duality. We call it a wave-particle duality. So the waves are those rolls like you would see ripples in a pond. And what happens is when they shoot the electrons through, there's a probability of where they may be, but they create what is a wave pattern, so they have some kind of a wave structure. So I sort of drew a picture like this. If you can see this, it would be, they're shooting it through, it's going through these two things, and just like waves in a pond, it comes out from each one of those slits. And what it does is the two of them, because there are two, it creates an interference pattern, basically. How that looks on the back wall, when they do this scientifically and send it to the back, and see it on a screen on the back wall, it looks like a bunch of vertical lines, which is basically, that's a symbol of that it's a wave pattern going through. Because it's these interference spots that create those waves in the back. So waveform creates this pattern, as you see. However, particles, if it's a particle, it would create this pattern of just the two lines. So they saw this wave pattern, and they were observing it. And what was interesting to them is there's these smaller particles. These particles are the structure of all life that we think of as physical things. And it's like they're really not physical things. They're a wave, but they're not like a thing you can put your finger on, which is a little weird to think about it, but it's just this. And in that process, what they did was they had an observer. So they're looking at it, of course, right? So they're watching this or observing this as scientific. This is all a very scientific experiment. So they have an observer. So that's an eye, actually. It took me a while to keep it. But so there's an observer, right? So first of all, what they had was they had observers. They had an observer here that was watching it go through the slits and then hit the back wall. And what happened is, when there was no observer, we had this thing going on. This was the thing going on when no one's looking at it, no one's observing it. It's this. When there was an observer, when there was an observer, as soon as there's an observer, it's this thing, which means now the particles are functioning as a physical thing. They're like now gaining physicality in our world, so to speak. So the wave, something of nebulous possibility, suddenly becomes a physical thing because we're watching it. Well, they said, well, let me see, let's put the observer over here after it goes through the slit. They put it here. And even in this spot, even though it's sort of after this, and they even did it's a very complex thing that I could never draw, but they did a sort of delayed thing where they're sending the molecules and things past, right? They're sending them through the double slits, but they're doing it in a way that the observer is back here, and they don't know whether these particles going through don't know whether they're going to be observed yet. But in time, they're going to be observed over here. And when the person observes them, they go away from waveform and go to this. It's as if the particles knew before they were ever observed. Are you catching me? They knew before they were ever observed that they were going to be observed. Poof, right? Did your head blow? Did your head blow? Mine blew up, right? So mine blew up. Because I'm like, what does that mean, you know? And then they even did it where they put like a mechanical robot here to observe. And when that was the case, it was a waveform. So it wasn't the mechanical, it was a conscious person observing that turned it into this form. It was a consciousness had to witness it. Just a mechanical thing, it stayed as a wave function. So, I mean, when you think about what that is, it's like, what does that mean? In that it means somehow consciousness is what makes matter out of ethereal nothing, basically. And what could that consciousness be? What does that sound like? You know, it's the question, right? So, and think about this, is like, this must be something intellectual or intelligent is taking nothing and making it matter. Think about the Big Bang, right? Big Bang. Well, there's some theory now that the Big Bang isn't even a thing anymore. You know, that might not be what the universe is. But the Big Bang would be is some kind of beginning of nothing, from nothing. This chunk of matter that explodes and becomes all of these universes, all of the galaxies and things like that. So it's sort of like the explosion of all of physical matter, basically. And yet there's really not that much there. A lot of people say we just sort of live in a simulation or something like this because there's so little when they keep splitting particles, there's like nothing there, sort of. So it's almost like a hologram or something in how that is. But that all exploded. So it's sort of like there must have been some kind of intellectual intelligence that could have taken whatever is waveform, ethereal stuff, and turned it into matter. So that, you know, to me, it's a picture of sort of scientific proof of something, of this intellect or this consciousness that isn't connected to it. So a couple other things that happened was there's a thing called scientists call it spooky behavior, but it's a thing called quantum entanglement. And what that is that they're observing, science is observing paired particles that split, and they're created together and they're paired. And what happens is, at a great distance from each other, if one, because they're paired, if one turns left, the other one turns right. I'm explaining this in a very simple way. But they both turn at the exact same time. So in some way, it's like they're connected. Although in our sense of space and time, right? Space and time, it would take, if something happened here, to go miles later, it would have to take time to get there and affect that thing that's over there. But for two things in that distance to both move at exactly the same time means there's something that's connection that has nothing to do with the distance and space and time, basically. So that's a function of particles that they're looking at, actual particles. So how can that be, except there's what is that about? How can that be? Because that's beyond what we think scientifically as space and time. There are discussions about just traveling through the universe and things like that. Of course, discussions about how interdimensional travel and things. If there were people from other worlds would come here, how would they expand to this great distance? And there's discussion about what would be interdimensional travel would be something where it has something to do with their consciousness and mind, where they can travel great expanses in a split second because they just think it and they're there, basically. And this thing would be a little bit of while that's speculation, this thing could say in a scientific way that could be real. The other thing is there is a grand unified field. It's called grand unified field. This is where everything essentially is saying everything is connected. This is in quantum theory. Everything is connected. So, and I see this all, from a spiritual sense. We talk about being one, we're all connected. if we break down everything, we look at it, all this the energy is it's all involving a consciousness where everything is connected. We talk about being one. All religions talk about not our duality, but our oneness, and that connection to that. And this whole thing is sort of like proving that whole thing in a scientific way. So it's interesting how science is talking now, because if you heard them just talking without specific terminology, you would think they were speaking about spiritualism or spiritual powers, about God and what that is, and what consciousness is. So I think I think in this process, the other thing that's very interesting is to me, along with that, in terms of whether science proves God, is also the scientific things that are happening around the center of
CERN.
what's that?
CERN.
Oh, that too. That's another one, yeah. But also, and that's another really good point, the CERN thing. But around near-death experiences and the consciousness and the things with near-death experiences, and most of us know what that is, near-death experiences, and how that is. That would be more of a proof of a heavenly place or a place beyond. And of course, in that, one of the sort of mind-blowing, again, another mind-blowing thing that happened for me was studying this is more a proof of heaven than a proof of God, but looking at particularly the near-death experience of Dr. Eben Alexander. He wrote the book that's called Proof of Heaven. And in that book, he talks about, first of all, he's a surgeon, he's a scientist. So, and came to this as basically an atheist. So what happened, he had sort of like brain-eating bacteria or something that put him in a coma and things. It destroyed a big percentage of his brain, but he was in a coma. And then he talked about, as many near-death people talk about, going off to a heavenly place with really beautiful stuff and learning stuff. He talked about having access to understanding things, like we talk about Akashic records and things, talking about that. So he was talking about all that, but was different than in this that was most intriguing to me, and just yielded again this whole thought of where are we, where is God, where is consciousness, are we one with that consciousness? What he talked about was when he finally came back and was alert, could come back, he lost all of his ability. I mean, he had lost the cells and connections to do his surgery, so he couldn't do that all. But over a period, as his brain healed, with new connections, you understand, the brain is healing with new connections, right? As that healed, what happened was he got back his abilities that he had, his ability to do surgery and his memories about that came back. Now, how is that possible? How would it be possible if you're developing new brain material and neurons? I mean, I'm thinking of it rather simply. I'm just a scientific explanation. I was like, how would it be possible for him to do that? He came to the conclusion that our conscious, our memories, what we know and who we are. He came to the conclusion that while we think of our brain, and we think with our brain, and there's a connection in the activity of the brain, our memories are not stored in the brain. Who we are, or what we are, our memories are not stored in here. So where are they? Where are they? Where are they stored, in other words? That was his conclusion, coming from it as a scientist, again. And I thought this was so intriguing. What it would mean would be, every picture of this is somehow how we are like God, where we create what's out there. It's just waves behind us, and then in our consciousness it becomes physical things. And our actual intelligence, our being, who we are, is stored in this bigger place beyond our brain. Our brain is maybe a conduit, in this physical plane. but it's not this, can you imagine that? We're not, like, it's not stored. It's just mind-blowing to me. But anyway, I don't know how you would feel about that, but I just find that all very intriguing. And to me, it says more and more how we're only in this, we're in this physical plane in a certain way. And a lot of spiritual writings and things talk about this. We create like God. We create out of the ether, and it's our consciousness, our desire, and our creation that puts it in front of us. And it's all happening all at the same time. And we're here. And our whole idea and memory and time and space are all elements of a bigger plane that precipitates into this physical world and a physical because we think of it with our consciousness, which tells me that our consciousness is really sort of connected. It's like the same thing as God. You know, we see our consciousness as a separate, but it's just a separate group of memories and things. But at some place we can tap that same consciousness. And of course, those who do work with meditation and things like that go into that consciousness. And they're Buddhists and things. It's all about being the observer of the observer. So you become one with this, transcendental, become one with the consciousness that we all are, that we're all one, and we're just little separate facets of that consciousness here. Much of this relates to exactly what spiritualism is and what we believe about who we are and our consciousness going on and the progression of our souls that continues after a change out of the physical realm. So it's very much related to what we do. I just think that it's very interesting. I think it's very interesting that science, in its struggle to understand things, is sort of proving the existence of God and heaven, and showing that to us in these ways that are scientific. So I hope that's interesting to you. There are so many websites and things about this on the internet. If you go in there, and there's lots of things. Eben Alexander, the doctor, has a book out called Proof of Heaven. It's very, very interesting read. And then, of course, just all the things. CERN, all the other things that are in there talk about these things. If you're interested also in the study of consciousness, that's another very interesting area of all of consciousness, which is noetics, the science of noetics. And there's some great discussions, and it's all scientifically based. But as you listen to it, you feel like you're in church, in a way. So as spiritualists who like to see scientific evidence of what we believe in and aren't satisfied with other things, it's good that we have this ability. I'll say just this one last thing. Other religions tend to, a lot of times other religions tend to create a separation between God. We're here, God is there, and we have to make an appeal to God. We have to, like, I'm not worthy, but I need to make an appeal to you. I'm so thankful in spiritualism that we don't have that. We feel a connection, we feel a growth and a progression toward God, and there's not this idea that these are two separate things. I think that's maybe one of the greatest drawbacks of other types of religion, is that separation, because you never get there. And I think we all don't believe that, of course. We do get there. All right, well, thank you very much for listening to me.